This video is to go over normal distribution and the empirical rule. And so with normal distribution and the empirical rule, you know that 68% of the data will fall within one standard deviation of the mean. And so if the mean is in the middle, to find one standard deviation, we would add the standard deviation to the mean or subtract it from the mean. And this will end up being 68% of the data. If we go out one more standard deviation, so if we're within 2, so if I add the standard deviation twice or subtract it twice, now I'm out 2 standard deviations from the mean, and this would cover 95% of the data. All right, if I add one more standard deviation or subtract it one more time, so now if I'm within 3, we're at 99.7% of the data. So if I add 3 or subtract 3, I'm now covering from here to here. This would cover 99.7% of the data. So we can use this to answer questions. And so my first question, I've just got a few examples here to help us kind of grasp it. But it says, in a class of 200 students, the mean of their recent test was 62% with a standard deviation of 4. How many students scored between 54 and 70? So sometimes you might be given a question saying, hey, here's how many people or how many things we have. This is the mean. This is the standard deviation. How many fell in this certain interval? And that's what we're looking at here. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to create my own curve. Turned it into a triangle. It's very sloppy, but that's okay. So in the middle, I'm going to have my mean, which was 62%. And then I'm going to go out, up by the standard deviation of 4. One standard deviation up is 66%. One below, if I subtract it, would be 58%. All right, if I go out again, I'm now at 54%. And if I go up again, I'm now at 70%. And so this would be 2 standard deviations. If this is the mean, we went 2 up and 2 down. And so because we went 2 up and 2 down, that's 95%. So we would have 95% of the people who took the test, so of 200. And so we just do 0.95 times 200. And that would give us 180, I believe. 190 students. All right, another way that we could ask this question or ask a question about this rule is like number 2. Given a data set with a mean of 18 and a standard deviation of 1.5, what values would be within 68% of, what values will 68% of the data fall between? So it's like, here's the mean, here's the standard deviation. We want to know the interval of the values that 68% of the data falls between. 68% is 1 standard deviation. And so I would just take my mean and I would add 1.5. And I would take my mean and I would subtract my standard deviation. 16.5. And so the 68% of the data would fall between 16.5 and 19.5. All right, if a score of 73 is 2 standard deviations below the mean and a score of 82 is 1 standard deviation above the mean, what's the mean? So this time we don't know the mean. We don't know the standard deviation either. We just know how far apart these two scores are. So I'm going to draw my curve. Maybe you're better at drawing these. My iPad keeps switching it to a triangle. All right, so then we don't know the mean. I'm just going to put mean here. Then we would have 1 standard deviation, minus 1, minus 2. So we said 2 below is a 73, and 1 above is an 82. So the way that I do this is to figure out how many spaces we had. 1, 2, 3. So 3 standard deviations is equal to the distance between those two numbers, 82 minus 73. So I know 3 standard deviations is equal to 9 because those two numbers are 9 away from each other. You were 2 below and 1 above. You were 3 away from each other, 3 standard deviations away. So that means 1 standard deviation is just equal to 3. And now once I have that number, I can just add it or subtract. I guess subtracting would be faster, wouldn't it? So I'll just subtract it from 82 and go to 79. And then you can check it and make sure that would work. This would be 76. And yes, those are all 3 away from each other. So my mean would have been 79. And some people use mu for the mean, but I just use X bar. Hope this helps.